Well, I was thinking, first of all, you have been very brave coming here in such an afternoon with the windy and stormy weather. So thank you very much for being here. Thank you for coming to our living room. And that's what we have, living room conversation. I was thinking of community. I was thinking, what is community? And I thought I will just introduce something that I hope you take it into heart as well. If I dissect the community, I came up with come in unity. I don't know if that makes sense, but I thought come in unity is community. And that is what it is. If people come to an understanding that they are united in their thoughts, that makes a community. So that's something we can take with us. Another thing was, I was thinking of this beautiful phrase that says, the world is but one country and mankind its citizen. The world is but one country and mankind its citizen. So that, if we keep that in mind as well, that will give us the same meaning as come in unity and have understanding that we are all one. The appearance is only outside. Inner being, our attitude, our love, our understanding is all, we are all one. And there's no difference between any of us. So I just wanted to start with that positive note in a way, and I hope we can follow that one. So do you like to know where I come from? Yeah, okay. I actually like to say welcome to the living room conversation from my motherland to this blessed land, because Australia is really a blessed land, and I believe so. And it's destiny that I'm here, because when I was born, I won't tell you how long ago, but when I was born, I could not imagine seeing myself moving from my home country, coming to a beautiful island like Australia. So I'm very grateful with that thought. And also, I'm delighted to be in presence of such distinguished lady here, Auntie Averil. I've known her for over 30 years, maybe 35 years, as long as I have been in Albany. And we met first time at the college, doing art, not knowing anyone for myself. I wanted to get to know more people, so I thought going to college is the best remedy. So, all right, so from Persia, the land of my country. And I was actually very lucky to be raised in a family, very safe environment. Family that was caring, my mother, my dad. Dad, as usual, all the dads during that time or in that age, they were all working with, busy with work. And they were concentrating on bringing money and bringing food to the household. But mothers were very strong characters. So my mom was amazing, very loving, very kind, and she actually adopted so many children because of this kindness. Everybody called her Mama Ruhi. So even when now they talk about her, she says Mama Ruhi. So I'm very proud of her. So the childhood was very easy. We traveled few cities in Iran because of my dad's work. But I was the second one in the family. And my older brother, 3 years older, was always very, very supportive of me. And when we were teenagers especially, I remember how anywhere he went, he took me with him, and I was so proud because other teenagers did not take their sisters or brothers with them. So we went to dancing, we went to singing. I was involved in choir in Tehran because I was born in capital city of Iran. And we had many activities. One of the community activities that I created was I made a group of girls together, and we had regular meetings. And the meetings were fun. They were some education, and a lot of times actually we organized to go not camping, but going picnics or activities like that. So probably that was one of my first community activities that I organized. Then about, I think when I finished my school, I started working in different places. I learned typing in English and Farsi in my language, and I was working in an office. And then I met this young man who is sitting at the last row over there. And then we tied a knot, and about I think 2 years later we had our first child, and 3 years later, 3 years after we married, we actually with one child, a year-old boy, we decided to go to Africa. So, and that was very challenging because those days we had no idea. There was no internet. There was no really connection between where am I going, you know? The only solution was to look at some magazines and some books, but it wasn't clear where we were going. So I remember when we wanted to go, we had 3 suitcases. Each of us had one, and then one for the baby. It was packed with formula, milk, and baby food, because he was just 1 year old, and some nappies also. There were some nappies, but not a lot, so the fabric ones. And it was just so difficult. We went to Israel first for 10 days because the holy place of Baha'is are in the shrines of some of our founders, Baha'i founders, Bab and Baha'u'llah. They are in Israel. And so we went there for 10 days, and my husband got very, very sick there. He couldn't attend to the pilgrimage even for a few days. So it was very difficult time for all of us. It was all emotional as well as, you know, you're moving your whole life, actually, you know, going to somewhere that you're not sure where you're going, you know, and knowing no one, we didn't know anybody. So it was a difficult time, but I remember I cried a lot there because it was just unknown. But we were happy to move, and we wanted to go to Africa. The country that we chose was Zambia, and to go there, we went to Kenya. We stayed for 3 months in Nairobi just to get our tickets organized and also our work, because my husband had a work there. He had a promise of the work, but not completely the contract. So when we got to Kenya, we had to wait. And it was a period that all of a sudden we discovered, oh my God, there are so many milk formula and baby food in the shops. Kenya is, Nairobi is actually like a Europe. It's very fashionable, and the streets were tar, and a lot of Europeans were there. And so we just looked at each other and said, oh, those big suitcase of baby food was really waste. So I'd like to stop here and let Auntie Averil tell us about her childhood until wherever she wants to go. I think it's fair enough to stop. And then I'll start from Zambia.
Hi, my name is Averil Dean. I used to be Averil Williams. Come from a family of 11. This is part of my grandfather's country, and when the settlers first came off the ships, and our people were very strong in spiritual, in believing in spiritual history, and they never seen a white person. And when the ships first came in, they didn't know who they were. They thought it was the spirits of the dead coming back in different form. And when they went to look and see what these people were, they were getting shot, and they were trying to, because the spiritual healing came from within for certain members of the tribes, and they were getting shot. And so from that time on, I guess they became a really submissive people, because you can't fight a gun with a spear, and our things all came as from the land, from the bush, and so they became a submissive people, and they had to friend up the soldiers, or the people that came off the ships, otherwise things would happen. But they were also forgiving, also loving people, and when the settlers first came in and all the history started, they weren't classed as people, they were classed as flora and fauna. And so I like to tell this part of my story, because this is how it really was, and we don't in history see a lot of this sort of history being able to be told, because people that wrote the history always talked about the friendliness of the Aboriginal people, and they were great people. When they wanted to, when laws started coming in, and they wanted to get the Aboriginal people out of sight, so that was the forming of the missions, and I was born in mission in Nyoongar, it's just over the other side of the Stirling Ranges, and but my birth wasn't a birth of where you went in a hospital, because our people weren't allowed to go into any hospitals. They wouldn't take our people into hospitals or anything. And so our mums had to go out in the bush, and they had one lady, one older person with them, that maybe two, that were home nurses, and they'd go out in the bush and go away when it was time to have the babies, and they'd come back nursing a baby. And so the land became so important to us, because our part of our lives are in the ground. Part of our lives are there. So our very beginning and our very end, it goes with the land and the importance of it. And so when they formed the mission, my granny and my grandfather had 11 children on both sides, my mum and my dad. And my mum and dad got married in the mission. In the mission, they weren't allowed to speak their own language, study their own culture, because the white people believed that that was evil, because our people were never acknowledged as people, but as flora and fauna. And while they were in the mission, there was all sorts of rules put on them where they weren't allowed to go into town where the white people were. They weren't allowed to go in after 6 o'clock. They would get bashed up or put in jail, or some bad things would happen. My family were a family of 11 children, and I was in the middle. They were allowed to speak a language or study their own culture, because that became a sin thing. So we, our only teaching on the mission was about God, and we believe in our own law. We believe in the strength of spiritual beings. So it kind of became quite easy to adapt to the Christian faith because of that, because our belief was very strongly in the spiritual thing. So, and when the laws started coming in on the mission, everything was governed by permits. To go off the mission, you had to get a permit. To go out to work, you had to have a permit to be able to go out. You had to have rations to have butter and stuff. And our dad and his family used to go out and work on farms. And they became a yes boss people. My dad was the strongest, the most beautiful man that I know, and he never had any formal education. And he said to us, he always said to us, this is no longer a black man's world, this is now taken over by white people. And the only way you're going to be able to be successful and survive in it is through education. So for somebody who'd never had any formal education in his life, he was self-taught, but he knew what was the most important thing for us. When the mission, I went into hospital when I was about 9, I suppose, and I had a glandular fever, and I went into hospital, and the sister used to come around all the time to take my temperature because it was blazing high, and she used to say to me, if your temperature's not down, the next time I come around I'm going to chuck you in the dam out the back. So I got better quick, I can tell you. And when the missions closed down, when they used to go into town to do any shopping, they had to sit in designated areas and not go into a shop until all the white people had left. All that sort of stuff, you know, and they weren't allowed into the hospitals in early days. They weren't allowed to see doctors, or they had to have them out on the veranda if they got sick enough to see a doctor. They had to be looked at. The police at that time was the protectors, supposedly, but they used to bash the people up and you know, just exert their authority to them for even little or no reason. So it was like that. When the missions closed down, well, we moved out onto farming properties to clear all the land. The land that belonged to our people was now taken over, they became part of the workforce that did all the clearing, and my family used to work from almost daylight till almost dark, clearing the land, burning all the timber, doing things like that, making building fences and stuff like that. For very little, a lot of our people never used to get paid in money, and people that own the land used to get they used to get grants off the government, and they'd pay out people as little as possible. And I don't know if you this is the sort of history you want me to tell, but this is my history. This is what I know. This is what I need to talk about, because this is the truth of it, you know. And so we went out on farming property, and we used to live in bush camps or tents that we used to have. And when we first started going to primary school, that was a scary thing, because until we went out, kids, our Aboriginal children, were not allowed to go into the public schools, and we were just about the first ones to go out and go into a public school. And it was really scary, because, you know, it's your first time in a white school, and every other student were white people, white kids. And I was at the school, and I went outside, and I was standing around the corner, and these two little kids came in on their very first day of school. They were babies. They were 5, 6-year-old babies. And the little boy said, "Oh, look, there's a nigger now." So that was table talk, where people said at the table, sit at their table and say to their little children, when you go to school, be careful of the niggers. So, but I had a lot of happiness in my life, because we came from a strong family. We came from a family that were really hard working and had wonderful work ethics. They worked hard to pave the way for us as children. And then when we got into high school, and they started taking away children when we were at the primary school, and they started taking away children to assimilate them with the white society. They never tried to take any of my family, because we were well looked after by our mum and dad. And my mum used to, we had 11 children in our family, but my mum worked like a man. She helped my dad and my brothers do all the clearing, my uncles, and when my husband came down this way, and he wrote his story before he passed on, he said, "I pay tribute to my mother-in-law, Elsie Williams." He said, "She was the hardest working woman I've ever seen." He said, "I don't know how she coped working in the field and helping us clear land and do all that, and still be able to care for her children." So I guess, you know, when we were young, we really took mum for granted, you know, because I think all kids take their mums for granted anyhow. So and then we, the welfare used to come around and we used to run off and hide, scared that they would take us away from our mum and dad. And then they tried to push Dad to send us to Perth to go to school in a high school, because the idea was to get them take them away from their parents, get them into school. They get assimilated with the wider community, the white people, and they wouldn't even come back to their people. And I was at school one day, and he agreed to let us go in the end, and I was at school one day, and he came, and you know, when you went up there, they supplied you with the uniforms and everything, and you knew you looked lovely, you know, and you could compete with the white kids in their own environment. And then my dad came one day, and he came down the back of the school, and he was dressed in his old suit coat and his old trousers, but they were clean, but you know, he looked like a Nyoongar person, like every Aboriginal person, and I think that's what made me grow to what I am now. I feel so proud and so full of love for this person who was the most important person in my life, and I think I took a lot away from him that very day, and so when we finished our high school off, we did a nurse. Me and my sister did a nursing aid training, and I made a dash to Broome. I never forget that, because we had our first, me and a friend went up there to the Broome Hospital, and we had our first plane ride and all that, and we having lunch. They brought us lunch on the plane, and I was trying to eat my lunch, and she's spewing her guts out. She's spewing on the side of me, and I got the giggles, you know. It was funny anyhow. We went there to Broome Hospital and met the lovely people of Broome, and we didn't know their cultural protocols or anything like that, but they just embraced us, and you couldn't get away. There was too many boys and not enough girls, so we all got married up there. And I came back down here, and got married up there, came down here, brought 2 children back with me, and came back down here, and then had another 5, so I had 7 of my own, and then I fostered one when she was 3 months old. She became one of the most beautiful people in my life, and so all up I have 8 children, and then we ended up coming down here to Albany to settle in better conditions, for better opportunities for our children. And that's where I met Mahshid. And that's where we met. And we went to TAFE. I was overworked here, and I got stressed out. I went to the doctor and I said, look, I'm not coping, you know. He got on the phone and he rang TAFE up and he said, I want you to put this lady in TAFE. And that's how I came to go out to TAFE. And I never regretted that, and I never... So, that's where we met. And so, lots of things have happened. I had a lot of happiness and pride in who I am, pride in my culture, proud of it. And then now, like, people are wanting to, where they used to call our people savages and with no knowledge or anything, they're finding that they survived for thousands of years in the bush and still kept the bush healthy. When our grandfather said to us, he said, white man's greed is going to result in too much land being cleared. And he said, the land's going to turn back to salt. And he said, they'll be struggling to do something about it. So a little bit about me. That's a little bit about me. I'm very, very willing to answer any questions, or, if you wanted to ask me something, I'm very willing to do that, because I think, a lot of times people don't feel that they can ask a question in case it embarrasses them. I don't get embarrassed. I can laugh at things, I never get embarrassed. Not much anyhow. So. I'd give it back to, is that where we meet?
Okay. Okay. You want me to continue? Yeah. Well, I left you, don't forget your questions from Auntie Averil, please. And if you have questions from me as well, I'm more than happy to respond to it. So I left you where I left my home country, and we went to Africa. So we stayed in Nairobi, Kenya for a while, for 3 months. And then Ruhi's contract came. Ruhi is my husband. So the contract came and we went to Zambia. And it was amazing when we entered the airport. I was thinking, so what is going to happen? Now we don't know anybody. Maybe we have one address to go somewhere overnight and then call someone. And there were a group of, I don't know how many, maybe 8, 9 people were there. They were all holding our name and waiting for Ferdowsian family. And so it was overwhelming, actually. It was his boss and the new boss, and also a few of the Baha'i members of the community in Lusaka. So they were all embraced us and they said, oh, welcome. So we all went together to the place. I don't know, it wasn't a hotel. It was like a room that we could eat all together, whoever was there, like a lodge or something. So we went there, and then as soon as we got there, I could hear people were screaming, and they were drunken, and they were shouting, and children were running around. And I looked at Ruhi and I said, I'm not staying here, because he was going to go to work, and I was going to be there with a 1-year-old baby with no language. So I said, I'm not staying here. And fortunately, all the people that were in the airport, we were all together there. They said, the boss said, no, it's not suitable for family, so what to do? And one of the ladies, Baha'i ladies, she said, I'll take it away. She said, I know. She said, you come to our house. We have got a room for you. So she had 4 children, and she put the kids together, and she gave us one room. And it was just so lovely. The first 4 or 5 days of our stay in Zambia was so warmly, it was so warm and so loving, and really nice experience. It made it very nice. And then later on they gave us, we went to a hostel, and we stayed there for 7, 8 months. And by the way, I got pregnant on the way in Kenya. So my baby was born premature, 1 month premature, in just maybe 3 weeks out of the hostel. We got a house, and then we came to the house, and I think it was raining season. It was raining. I was going to get something from outside, and I fell. And then I had to be rushed to hospital, and thank goodness honestly, there are so many things that I'm so grateful. I feel we were constantly protected. We were constantly looked after. So the baby was very, very small and stayed for 10 days in hospital. And we had two girls, two Baha'i girls, Persian girls, that were nurses. So one of them came to stay with my son, that was, just then 2 years old. And then the other one came with me, holding my hand. And all the way he just prayed and prayed, because the baby was bridge and he wasn't ready to come. And I was so lucky. I had a nurse and a doctor staying with me for a couple of hours until everything sort of happened safely without any damage. But I didn't see my baby, because they took the baby away in the incubator away from me. So then they moved me, and I'm talking about crises and victories actually, because all this was like a crisis, but the victory was my baby was safe, and I had him in my arm the following day. But the following day we had to walk, I don't know how many, not kilometers, but we had to go out of this building to upstairs to another building, and turning around, going downstairs. Somewhere they had these babies there. There were about maybe 20 babies, premature babies. And the mom were there, and they would come there to breastfeed the baby or just to hold the baby. And we would go back. So I stayed only one night in hospital. But I had to come back for being with the baby twice a day, because I wasn't driving then. And I had a baby as well. I couldn't do it. And sort of after pregnancy, you still feel unwell and sort of heavy. So anyway, so all this happened when one of those girls told the doctor that I know this family, I go to them every day, please, please allow them to have the baby. So, and then the doctor agreed. But all the other ladies, all the other mothers were angry with me. They said, we have been here for a month and we are not allowed to take our children, and she's allowed to take it. Anyway, I was lucky. So we brought the baby home, and by 2 weeks, the baby grew to more than the size that he was born, because he lost some weight on the way as well. So he is a big boy, having 3 children himself. Yes, she's smiling at me, sweetheart. And then, yeah, and they have my oldest grandchild. My granddaughter is 17, and grandson 15, and then another girl 13. So we ended up having 3 children. So 2 children were born in Zambia. After 7 years in capital, in Lusaka, we decided to go to country, to go further away. And 1,000 kilometers away from the capital was northern province, which was Kasama, which was the place that we went. So that was a beautiful little town with only one street paved. The rest was dirt road, and beautiful bush around us. But we fell in love with people. We just loved people. So if I want to talk about some of the activities that I had there, with no language, very little language. When we were in Lusaka, somebody heard that I do sewing and I can draft patterns. And then they approached me and they said, can you teach some teachers of girls' college to draft some patterns? I said, okay, I'll do that. Now, I had to go through the dictionary to find the words, you know, stitches, scissors, needles, pattern, all this, you know, from the beginning. And I could speak a little bit, but not much, because the language of Persia is not English at all. So we learn English at school, but because we don't use it, it's very difficult. So I had the class, and I taught the ladies more practical things, like how to do hemming, how to do zigzag, how make buttonholes, how to put the zip on, and you know, this sort of thing. And then patterns, I showed them very, very simple patterns of skirts and how to draft patterns by measuring here and there. So that was my first job, actually. Because I wasn't working, I had little kids, but it was my part of communicating with people. I had children classes always. I had African kids coming to our home and singing, playing, and also maybe some prayers, some little prayers. And that was such a joy to see them run to our place. And it's a very common thing. People that live in Africa, they know that you have somebody helping you like a house servant, but I didn't treat them like house servants. They were our helpers. And the kids were the same age as our kids. So they would come to our home after school, and I would give them biscuits and porridge and custard, and they loved custard, and they would watch TV together with our kids. So that was the fun part. And we trusted our man who was working for us so much that one trip we had to go back to the capital, from Kasama to Lusaka, and we couldn't take the kids, so we left. I think we took only our daughter, our youngest child, with us, and then he stayed with our boys, and he looked after them, fed them, and showered them, and it was so lovely. And when we were leaving Zambia, we were all heartbroken because we wanted to stay. We really wanted to bury our bones there. When we left Iran, we actually said that we are breaking the bridges. We want to break all the bridges. We want to go and live in Zambia to be with Africans. And the love that they had in their heart for us and the love that we have for them is still there. And unfortunately, we haven't been able to go back. But from time to time, there is a little message coming from a friend or someone from Africa. But we know how they're doing. And then we came to Australia. So that was in 1985. After 13 and a half years being in Zambia, we came to Australia. We chose Perth because we had ticket to go to Sydney and Melbourne. We bought our own ticket. And we thought, well, Perth is the closest to our destination where we were from African continent. So came to Perth, and then we said we can decide if we want to stay or not. So 3 months in a hostel we stayed, and that was very nice because I used the library, and meanwhile I got a certificate to work at the Lady Gary childcare. I don't know if you know about it yet. So I worked as an assistant for ethnic assistant because that was the time, 85, many Persian families, they came to Australia because of the condition, because the regime changed. And by the way, we couldn't go back because the regime changed and family says don't come. As Baha'is, we were under a lot of persecution and execution in Iran, it still is. And they said, go somewhere else that you could do better with your life. So there were a couple of options, going to Canada or Malawi, another African country, and Australia. And because of Ruhi's job, they said Australia needs more, maybe some water for her. Yeah. So that's what happened. So we were there for 2.5 years in Perth, and then Ruhi got a job and transferred to Albany, and then we came to Albany. And that's where I met Auntie Averil. And also different places. I just wanted to say, this is an opportunity here to say that when you are, I'm sure all of you are involved in some sort of community activity. But when we are involved in community activity, there are many attributes that is needed. First of all is willingness to work with people. Then it's your attitude towards, I'm going to help no matter what happens. I don't want the outcome. I don't want the name. I don't want a tag. And you do it because you want to do it. You do it because your heart is open to do it. And that shows if you are sincere in the activity that you're presenting, it will show. So I try to use my sort of these attitudes of detachment or kindness to everyone, kindness to myself as well. There are times that I stop and I say, well, enough is enough, I need to take it easy because your health doesn't allow you. So you have to be kind to yourself and to others as well. But the activities that I have been involved, I think I just sort of touched them down here. This is just this afternoon, sort of trying to put my thoughts together. Because with Auntie Averil, we decided we just go there and we just talk from our heart, because that is the best way to do it. So I have been involved in Solaris Care. Solaris Care is a community that is an office that my good friend Kay as I met her there, and they look after the cancer patients as well as the family of the cancer patients. So it's a space for people to go there, to relax, to get a massage, to just have a cup of coffee, and ears are ready to listen to whatever they want to say. And that's a wonderful place actually for fundraising. If you are eager to do fundraising, I would love to do fundraising for them. I have taken part in the contributing to it, but I haven't done it because I do cooking, Persian cooking, and I have done fundraising for Headspace, which is a mental health for children and youth, and also for hospice. We did a very good fundraising a couple of years back. So if you like to invite me, I'll cook for you, and we can save some money for different associations. So I worked with Samaritan Befrienders, and that was another, not working actually, it was a voluntary work. And that was very rewarding, because you're there from 7 to 11 o'clock in the evening, and people that are desperate, they call, and they need to talk to someone, and you're there to listen and also to ask them, so what do you think? What do you want to do? A little bit of counseling, but not so deep. So it was very rewarding. And one of the nights that I never forget is a lady called, and she was on distress, and she was crying, and she said that My mother has taken some medication and she's dying and this and that, and now she was, I think, from Bridgetown, and then the mother was somewhere else in, for example, Donnybrook. And then, I don't remember the areas, but I'm just saying they were not close together. And she said, well, she said that I need to know my mom is safe. So I said, that's okay. So I got her address, I got her phone number, and then I called the police. So the police, they got my number. They need to know where I'm calling, if it is not it's right or wrong. So they did what they wanted to do, and they called me back, and they said, thank you very much. We saved a life. And that was the lady had fallen, and she needed help, but she couldn't reach out. And they got her, and they took her to hospital. So I was very pleased. I said, well, one of the good things that you do, and you feel, you do it without any expectation, but I was so pleased that, she was safe. Other places that I have worked is at the Migrant Resource Center, and that is very rewarding as well, I must say, because people come from other countries and they don't know the language, they don't know anything about it. And Migrant Resource Center, which we still have it here, and Julie, lovely Julie, is working there. They look after their needs. A little bit of the language barrier is there, so you help them. I managed to help Persians and Afghanis, which there were a big group of Afghanis here, and there are still some in Mount Barker. So I still see them in the street, and we have a chat together. So these are the places, and I'm involved in crochet group and enjoy it very much. Most of you I know from there. And friendship goes more than attending a meeting or activity that you do. Life is very short. I put some photos together because Auntie Averil mentioned she wants to bring her photos. And I was looking at it and I was just thinking, I remember when I was 10 years old. So what happened? Many years ago. So I think the spirit stays young, but we age and enjoy life, and I try to do the same. So on that note, I give it back to Auntie Averil if she wants to share something else.
I think it's just about Tom's story, but anyhow, when I brought my husband down from up north, and he nearly died with the cold. After living all his life in Broome, he came down here. When he first, because the only work he had to do was clearing the land with my family. And they embraced him, and he used to go to work with a singlet, shirt, a jumper, a small coat, an overcoat on top when he first came down. And but when he got acclimatised, he was okay, yeah. And then we came down, we moved from the area that we were in, came down and lived in Cranbrook for 12 years. And after being part of community where at school you're accepted, outside of school the same kids didn't know you and stuff like that, because that was what our policies were, to say, you don't sort of associate with Aboriginal people. And so when we came down to Cranbrook, that all changed because the community there was so good, and because my husband had good work ethics, they embraced us. And every time we went anywhere in Cranbrook, they had to introduce us, and our kids became part of the school community on and off the school hours, and whenever they had anything for the children there, they made sure that if they had a dance, one of the ladies would come around and bring some material around and make up a dress for my daughter. And so they really gave us an insight into what life should be like, you know, and they embraced us. And I always had suspicions of people that they would be looking at you to see what you had and judge you on the little bit that you got in your house, or if you had a little bit of untidiness or anything, that they would be judgmental of you, because that's what it was like all of our lives. But in Cranbrook, when I used to go to their places and I'd knock on the door and they'd say, come in, you know, bring me in the room, and when they used to come home to my place, I'd open the door a crack, you know, so that they couldn't sort of see inside. It was funny. There was one guy there that he used to bring me tomatoes and stuff, and he'd come around, I brought you some tomatoes, and bowled straight past me into the kitchen and put it in. Oh, I grew to love him very much, because he was only young lady, but he just became a really good friend, you know, and I appreciated the fact that he wasn't there to look around, he was there to think. And as we got opportunity to bring our family down to Albany, and we got a Aboriginal loan to buy a house. We could only buy a cheap one in Mount Lockyer, and so we moved there, and the kids went to school, and old Isabel and my husband hadn't had that much schooling, and he said to me, what can I do? And I said, well, come on, let's go out to TAFE, and he enrolled in TAFE. And he went out there and he enrolled in TAFE, and he became a really important part of community down here. He worked in Southern Aboriginal Corporation for many years and did a lot of stuff, good community stuff for all the people here, and became very well respected and very well loved. And I'm a people sort of person. I just have so much involvement with doing things with community here in Albany. They never let me rest either. I'm still going. So, and I've never seen anybody that gets so much joy out of doing things for people as I have with my friend there. So I really appreciate her for showing the love towards family. But I do a lot of community stuff, and I do a lot of welcomes to country, and I do a lot of things in the school, and you know, just teaching what I can. So, I'm still rearing great grandchildren that I have in my care. And people say to me, "Oh, you should take it easy." But well, hey, I said, "You want me to sit in the chair and wait to die?" Exactly. Yeah, so I've said, but I do it because I have this joy in my heart for people, you know, and that's the important fact of my life. And so, and I don't think you can go wrong when you have that cancer. So, you know, like I made sure my children had a pretty good education, and one of my daughters is over in Victoria. She lives, and she's a consultant over there, and she works in Geelong Grammar School. So she's very well respected over in Victoria, and doing a lot of cultural stuff and stuff just to help the students over there. And I said, how do you get on with the students there? Well, she said, well, Mum, they're all filthy rich, you know. she said, but she said there's some really nice kids. But some, you know, are used to getting whatever they want, whenever they want it and stuff like that because money wasn't any problem to them, so yeah. But yeah, the one thing that has been big for me is that even though she's gone on and become very successful in her own right, is that she's always kept her feet on the ground and knows where she comes from. So, you know. And that's the most important thing for me, you know, like it. And yeah, rings us up every day to make sure we're all okay and it's coming home for Christmas. So I'm looking forward to that. And she married a white boy and he comes from Victoria, but when he comes home we all love him to bits. So it's all been an important part of my journey is being able to accept who I am, but to be able to embrace who you are, you know. So that's me, and yeah, very welcome to ask answer any questions, and I've got some photos if you'd like to have a look. Like I want to show you my mum. I'm very proud of my mum, so and my dad, and yeah, and my granny and my grandfather, and yeah, they were really important people in my life, and
we are absolutely grateful to have both of you today, to hear your stories. And what I've heard today is about resilience despite persecution, adversities, and prejudices. You have two individuals who are shining light in their communities. And I think friendship does a lot, doesn't it? We build new bridges and we build new pathways, and together we will conquer everything. Yeah.
That's right. That's right.
All right. Well, please stay for tea, coffee, and cake. Don't rush away.